And on to part 2 of season 1, episode 7, Madeleine McCann. If you haven't checked out part 1 yet, make sure you do before this one.
So they did bring in 2 canine dogs that were highly trained and brought over from the UK. So these weren't from Portugal. They were actually from the UK, where the McCann family was from. So these dogs were Eddie and Keela. So Eddie was a cadaver dog, which meant this dog was drawn to sense of like a decomposed body, death, and could alert them if they smelled death or that a dead body had been present there at some time. The other dog, Keela, was trained to smell the scent of blood. Even if you wash the surface, if there was blood there at one time, she would be able to find it. So the cadaver dog alerted in an area in Kate and Jerry's room. This wasn't the room that Maddie happened to be sleeping. They alerted to Maddie's stuffed toy cat, Cuddle Cat, that you can see Kate holding in all of her media interviews. She was always holding this little Cuddle Cat. And what was odd with Cuddle Cat was the fact that Kate would hold it at all the media things and smell it, and she just said it smelled like Maddie, which sounds normal. But when they told her about the canine dogs coming over, for some reason, Cuddle Cat was washed. She said that Cuddle Cat was dirty and smelled like sunblock, so it needed to be washed. But Eddie still smelled a dead body on Cuddle Cat. And like most people have stated in any of these type of podcasts or videos, is that was their kid. No way in hell would they have washed their kid's toy. That was maybe the last thing that their kid had touched. My boys, one of them, he's had the first time we went to Florida with him. We took him to Florida. We have family in Florida. The first time we took him to a Gulf area. We just had the one at the time, and he was 1 year old, and he picked out this crocodile, and we named him TikTok Croc. And to this day, he is 6 now. He's going to be 7 in 2020. Oh my God. It's so sad to think, but he's going to be 7 this year, and you will still find TikTok, squished somewhere in his bed with him. And then my other son, he's kind of bounced back and forth to stuffed animals. When he was a baby, he always had a fox with him, and he still does sometimes, but now he loves Dumbo. So he actually has a stuffed elephant that he calls Dumbo, and he's always hugging it and kissing it. And I'm like, when a case like this with a kid and like their little stuffed animal, it just sticks out to me because of how close my kids are with their stuffed animals. But also, I still always think of my little sister, because when she was that age, she had like these little stuffed cats that she always would hold and just hug, and it's so sad. But yeah, it was dirty and it smelled of sunscreen, so she washed it, is what she had said. I don't understand why she would be smelling it and saying it smelled like Maddie after she washed it, though. But again, the dog still smelled death on it, and the cadaver dog also alerted them behind the couch and the living room space at that condo. They also alerted to Maddie's shirt, to Kate's pants, and a shirt that Kate had worn too. Keela also alerted to blood behind the couch. Days later, both dogs alerted to the McCann's rental car that they had rented 25 days after Maddie had went missing. So what I was saying about this case, kind of going back and forth, was the fact that we're literally days later. They stayed in Portugal. They had to rent a car. And so they didn't bring out these dogs for a while. They had to have these dogs sent from the UK. And once they got there, it had already been like a few weeks out. So they had time. There was time for people to come in and clean, and for Cuddle Cat to be washed and clothes to be washed, but these dogs still could smell all of these, and the police knew that they would be able to. But it was very strange that these dogs, the cadaver dog, alerted to the rental car that they didn't even have until 25 days after Maddie had went missing. And because they thought, this is strange, they actually lined up cars, rental cars from the other families. And still, this dog only alerted to the McCann's car. They even took these dogs into the other condos next to the McCanns, and the dog still only alerted in the McCann's apartment condo complex. But Kate and Jerry both stated that these dogs were unreliable. Jerry and Kate both would get snappy in their interviews and came off as very arrogant when anyone was trying to get their story out. These people wouldn't be like, and a lot of them wouldn't be like hateful to them or anything like that, or be like trying to blame them for this. It didn't matter how you came off to these two. They were just kind of arrogant in every interview. They wanted to come off as good parents, but they always were just so rude. So Clarence Mitchell worked for the McCanns even years after Maddie's disappearance. When things look bad on people, Clarence comes in and he coaches them on what to say to the press. And that is what he did for them. A man in the UK that had tons of money and was really filling for this family actually paid Clarence to come to them and help them out. But when things went south and people started speculating that the McCanns had something to do with Maddie's disappearance, this guy was like, no, I'm not going to pay for this anymore. And then the McCanns started dipping into the Madeleine McCann fund, which was set up to help pay for people who were actually searching for their daughter and for ways to find more evidence about their daughter. But they used this fund to not only pay for Clarence to make them look better for the press, they also used a chunk of it to pay off their mortgage and a bunch of legal bills because of all these authors that were writing books on the case and pointing fingers at them. They wanted to make sure that they sued as many of those as they could. The McCanns sued an author who wrote a book claiming that Maddie's death was in the apartment and it was accidental, but they were covering it up. They won, but later it backfired because of so much evidence that came out that he turned around and sued them. And now I'm not sure if he ever won that whole battle. I need to look it up and I will probably add it into my blog for you guys. But yeah, I thought that was really crazy that he got sued and yet he somehow was able to turn back around and sue them because of all the evidence that was there, or all the knowledge that everybody knew about this case. After the K9 dogs, they were both brought in for questioning. Kate was asked 49 questions and she didn't answer 48 of them. She literally only answered one question. A lot of people want to say that it was because her lawyer told her not to. I get it, yada, yada, yada. I mean, I don't know. I feel like if you're trying to make yourself look good and you're not up to something or that you didn't do something, you would maybe try to answer some more of those questions. But because of that, they were pretty much marked as people of interest with this. So I'm going to go off subject for just a minute. There was a man named Sir Clement Freud. I don't even want to talk too much on him because I feel like it's just a stupid part of the story. But I have seen a lot of people mention him because there was a lot of people saying that he was somebody who could have been a person of interest in this because he was a chef and then a member of parliament. He died in 2016, and when he did die, women came forward and said that he was a rapist. One woman has made it very known that his house was only a few hundred yards from the Ocean Club where they were staying. Strangely enough, it was never looked into, and Clement actually invited Kate and Jerry to his villa 2 months after Maddie disappeared. He told them to come over and that he felt bad about how the media was treating them. He never invited people over, so it was very strange to the locals because they'd never even really seen him out of his house. He had them over a couple times and would joke to them about the media and how the police were handling things. And they said they would just laugh about it and have dinner and drinks. And she wrote it all down in her book, apparently, which I can't even bring myself to read because during that time, their daughter was still missing. They had no idea what was going on to their daughter. I mean, Kate wrote really disturbing things in her book, and I mean, people have talked about them, but it's awful stuff. I mean, you can read the book if you want. I honestly don't want to even support her in that way of buying a book like that, but it just talks about how she talks to her husband about what they think is going on with their daughter, and talks about how she's probably raped. And I mean, that sounds disturbing, but she goes as far as to like talking about parts and how she thinks they're being destroyed. And oh my gosh, it's just so awful to even think about, let alone like write publicly in a book about your daughter. And while that could have been going on, you were off with Sir Clement, eating with him and feasting and joking and laughing. It blows my mind. I can't. It also doesn't help that days after Maddie was missing, Jerry and Kate just kind of gave up. They said they were so exhausted they couldn't just keep looking. Yet, Kate was spotted on a jog, and Jerry was spotted playing tennis. Oh my god, I cannot wrap my head around it. I just can't. These two were doctors. I don't understand why they wouldn't bring a nanny with them when they were doing things. They had money. Why couldn't they put their kids in the daycare that was offered there? They took them to that daycare and to the activities every day. Why not at night too? That's kind of where the story ends. There's just not much more to go off of. I mean, as you guys, a lot of you know, Madeleine was never found. She still has never been found. There's people who think, oh, this is her, and there's been so many sightings of her that people think is Madeleine, and tons of them are ruled out, but it's like we will never know what really happened to Madeleine. There is a lot more information that I haven't went over yet that I would like to, about kind of like what could have happened. So, like I said, they explained to the Tapas bar woman that they needed that certain table. The waitress, or the woman that was running it, put that note in there. And later they did find out that the note literally said they need this table reserved at 8:30 every single night because they're leaving their kids alone in their apartment sleeping. So that could have been like the easiest thing for an offender or like a predator to see and be like, okay, so it could have been maybe somebody that worked there. It could have been a friend of somebody that worked there, and they knew that these people are going to be here every single night. So it's like, why not watch them, and see how their routine is, and, just slip in when, the coast is clear. I mean, they were there for like 5 days before this happened. So somebody could have easily watched them this whole time and figured out their pattern. And I mean, that could have been with anybody. Somebody at the resort could have realized. I mean, the lady up above knew that they were leaving her by herself. She heard her crying. So they could have easily been somebody at the resort that watched their patterns and seen that they were in and out, leaving kids there. So that's what a lot of people think happened. But there's also different theories as well. Another person of interest was the man who was in charge of translating from the police in Portugal to Kate and Jerry. His name was Robert Murat, and you'll actually see him in like documentaries. There's a whole documentary that's like, I don't know, I can't remember how many episodes it is, but it's on Netflix. And he's in it, and he talks a lot like how infuriated he was that he became a suspect when he was really just trying to help out. He lived right down the street from Oceanside Resort, so he was very close. A woman who was anonymous when she called the police, she called in a tip that it was him. She said that he lived right down the street from there. He lived with his mom at the time because he was going through a divorce from his wife from the UK. And people thought he was suspicious because he never wanted to be on camera. But I mean, it was just like a privacy thing. And I don't know. But he was taken in, and when he was brought in, the police had Jane see him, and when she saw him, she said, that was the man that was carrying the little girl that I seen. This was before they ruled out who that man actually was, and it really was just another tourist that was carrying his daughter home. Like, the whole thing was just like exploded, and it's like, this Jane has lied the whole time. I mean, yeah, she probably seen the man walking by with a little girl, but it was the tourist. Like, they had the sketch that she had them draw, and then the tourist that came forward, he dressed in the outfit he wore that night for them to take pictures, and side by side, they were identical. He also brought in his daughter's PJs and showed them, and they were not Maddie's PJs, they were his daughter's PJs. His daughter was a little blonde-headed girl, and even the PJs, it was like a pink, or like a, yeah, I think it was like a pink top maybe, and it had like flowers on like the pants. Everything matched up. Jane's story just went out the window. Like, it wasn't him. It's so weird because it's like they really wanted to corner this Robert and really make it look like it was him. The blame was definitely being pushed onto him. But he was clear of all charge. There was absolutely no proof. He was only helping look for her. He was all over the news as a person who took Madeleine McCann. His life was literally ruined during that time. Like, I mean, can you even imagine? And I'm sure there's still people out there that think he did it. I'm not saying he didn't do it, because you really never know. She's still gone. But I'm just saying there was a lot of evidence to show that he didn't do it. By the man, like, it was not him walking by with a little girl. Like, they cleared all of that. Like, I feel like that would be too much of a coincidence of that other tourist that came forward. But he did end up suing, and he did win because there was no evidence to hold him as taking Maddie. Another family saw a man carrying a small girl from the resort to the water that night. They sketched this man, and a lot of people have come into question, and I'm not even going to go down the list because we would be here for a while if I talked about all of it. None of it added up. There was no evidence to show that it was any of these people, but strangely enough, some people said it looked just like Jerry and that it could have been him. But the timeline with him checking on the kids and then talking to his friend on the street didn't add up with when they seen this man carrying the little girl. Some think she wandered off on her own, afraid, and I feel like, wouldn't people have seen her, or wouldn't, if she did wander off or something, I feel like she would have been found. But then people think if she did wander off, maybe somebody snatched her then. Others think she accidentally died in the apartment, though. They think that she fell and got hurt, and the parents wanted to cover it up because they were in a different country, and they were scared. That would explain why the dogs went off to blood and there being a dead body. But there's also the theory that these parents were both doctors. People think that they may have been giving their kid medication to help them sleep while they went to the bar. For one, the twins, during the door slamming, people running around frantic, screaming Maddie's name, the police coming through and looking, during that whole time, the twins never budged. They slept all the way through it. So it did kind of make the police think, that's strange. Like, were these kids given something maybe? It also makes you think, since she had told her parents that she cried the night before, maybe they upped her dosage thinking that would help her sleep better and stay asleep while they were gone. Maybe it went south and, she didn't wake up from it, or maybe she had a bad reaction to it and they freaked out. Strangely enough, the Portugal police seemed to think that that was what happened, but they had nothing to really pinpoint it on them. All they really had were these dogs who, were smelling a body on all these things in their car too, which to me, that's just like mind-blowing. I don't understand why. It's so hard to hear stuff like that and to not think that there was something more there. And especially with how the McCanns acted with the dogs, they would go on shows and be really snappy and stuff like that. And when the cadaver dogs were even mentioned whatsoever, they'd be like, well, what do you think of that? Since the cadaver dogs had went off, and they would be like, why don't you ask the dog? And I mean, they were just constantly just nasty about it and saying how the dogs weren't reliable, and I mean, all kinds of stuff. And a lot of people have stated it, but I mean, dogs are not going to lie to you when they smell something like that. And these two dogs were, everybody has went on and on about how highly trained these two dogs were. It blows my mind. But to think that their daughter may have had like an overdose from the medication her parents might, I'm not saying they did, This is all just theories, and not even from myself, from a lot of other people. But if theoretically that happened, that would make sense on how the dogs, alerted. And if Maddie was hidden somewhere and then later placed in the rental car to go when everything was kind of settled to place her somewhere else, it kind of makes sense. They had the time because the dogs didn't even come for almost 3 weeks. If that had came out and they were honest about it, they could have lost their medical license. They would be out of work. They could have possibly lost their other 2 kids and maybe even jail time. And they were in Portugal, in another country, so they're probably like, and they were not in the UK, so it's like, what would happen? I'm sure they freaked out and, but still, if they had something to do with it, it still makes me question, why was she never found? Why was a body never found? I don't understand it. I'll never be able to understand it. And it's like, now, what would be there to really find, to really pinpoint it? I mean, I know that if they found remains, they could identify it as her, but it's just it's so sad. That's kind of where I'm at with this. I mainly am going theoretically. I don't want anybody to come for me because I like to state what I think happened. I mean, obviously, I'm with most people in thinking that the parents knew something more than what they're leading on. It just does not make sense. I think these dogs are smarter than what these parents seem to think too. And I'm really infuriated by this case, so that kind of makes me lean more towards the parents. But it is hard for me to believe that it was them too, because again, why wouldn't she be found? They're in Portugal. Would they really know where to even hide her at? I don't know. It's such a tough one, and everybody has their own theory on it. If you have a theory or of a really popular theory that I didn't mention, please let me know. On my Instagram at Caffeine Crime Podcast, so I can add it to the blog. I would love to know your thoughts too. You can go over to that Instagram and comment on today's episode post and let me know what you think happened to Madeleine McCann. This is said to be the most heavily reported missing person case in modern history, and it's crazy. This year, Madeleine would be turning 17 years old, like my sister and like my brother, and it's devastating. Can't believe this case has went on so long. Since it's one of those cases where you just never know, it's kind of, to me, like the John Bonet case, to where it's hard for me to feel for them because evidence just never cleared. I feel like it just never really cleared them completely, yet life just kind of went on. I don't know. My heart does go out to her twin siblings who probably don't even remember her because they were so little and now all they have is just pictures. Let me know, like I said, what you guys think. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I know it was probably a longer one because there's so much detail. But yeah, I will add anything that I missed over my blog as well as pictures and, different things like that there. That's always down below in the description. And yeah, I would love to discuss this. Please. I'm not trying to step on any toes or say this happened or this happened. Again, I'm just wanting to discuss these cases, not really have anybody come at me. So yeah, there is a lot of documentaries on this case if you want to dive even deeper, because there's other theories, there's other people that were sort of involved that they thought could have been a person of interest. There's all kinds of different things out there, and at this time, people just have to pick and choose what they think happened because we may never know. Thank you guys for watching or listening to today's episode. I appreciate it. Let me know what you think over at Caffeine and Crime Podcast, and I will see you guys next week with episode 8.